welcome. My name is Kate Griffiths from Whole Self Leadership, and I'm coming on today to talk to you about the next chapter in our Conscious Conversations book club, next chapter of our book, which is called Philosophy for Life, and we're on chapter 7 already. Can you believe it? In the middle of the mystics. So last week we talked about Heraclitus. It was a real favourite of mine as we delved into what it means to be a cosmopolitan. And this week we're looking at something a bit different. We're looking at the use of memory and memorising things. And that takes me on a journey. But before we get into that, I was struck by something on the very first page. It was a phrase which is, some things are up to us and others are not. Very simple. That really speaks to this whole issue that we have in our culture, particularly in the West, about control, needing control. And what do we do with that? That's really tough sometimes to know how to be with it, because we think we control everything and in fact we control nothing. And that's easy to say, and we see how much we can be with that when things come at us from left field. And I kind of like the kind of Indian view, really, that our dharma, our purpose, was set before we were born, and it's going to unfold in spite of us almost. And where we have free will, because I do believe we have free will, is in how we respond to what happens, how we respond to our karma. Do we feel sorry for ourselves, throw a pity party, or do we go, oh well, these things happen? Because at the end of the day, challenging things happen to everybody, not the same things, and we don't always respond in the same way. And it's knowing that love is really able to hold every colour and every perspective, even if it's completely different to our own, which is why I wanted to introduce you to Raphael. You can see it's a beautiful deep green. Let me see if this got white here. Deep green. There you go. Spritzer. See how that makes you feel? I love it, and I've been using it a lot recently. And I may be drawn to it because I've been teaching about Anahata, the heart chakra, and the colour associated with that is green. It's a beautiful smell. I hope you can get a sense of it wherever you are. I love it, and it's really, green is about allowing space, allowing yourself to be nurtured, caring for yourself, because there isn't anyone else that's going to do that for you. That feels really important this time, because I'm feeling, as I shared with my community earlier this week, pretty tired at the moment, which is weird because in some ways I'm doing less because it's half term and my girls are around and helping out with some of the things that I would probably normally do. And maybe it's just that, the change. And maybe it's because we're in the waning moon, and maybe it's because seasonally here in the Northern Hemisphere we're coming into winter. But if that's the case for you, then go easy on yourself. Carve out some time each day for yourself. Because it's aloneness is actually a wonderful thing. And someone other than me, a friend that some people know, Richard Bellas, who I knew for a while, he said aloneness is all oneness. And actually there's a real gift in that if we can see it in that way. And I do crave my alone time and make sure there is plenty of that these days, because it allows me to then show up and do things like this. So back to Pythagoras, which is where we were. And one of the things that he teaches us about is the importance of memorising stuff. if you found yourself in a POW camp, God forbid, if you've memorised poetry or philosophy or other texts, then you've got something to fall back on, because faith doesn't just happen and just decide to have trust and faith. But there's pointers that can remind you as to what that means. And so the students of the great philosophers would have their notebook and they'd write things down, and then everything would be shortened into a maxim that you could learn, so you understood the essence of the teaching. And you can see the point of that. You've got something in those times when life feels really challenging and difficult, something to hold on to beyond your emotions and feelings, and it's used a lot in CBT. And I guess that brings us to a really interesting point, because that's some people have raised, which is, if you take it to its conclusion, there was the people that believed in New Thought back in the 1910s, 1920s, which was, we are what we think and what we say, and so the more conscious we are of words have power. So actually, to be really positive, so you might use affirmations like, every day in every way I feel better and better, and the more you say it, it sinks into your cellular memory and it starts to then show up. And why is that? I mean, it's only a bunch of words, but actually if our subconscious believes that, then that will change perhaps the way that we appear to people. So it may shift our vibration, our energetic vibration, so people think we're nicer to be around. We may be kinder to others because we're being kinder to ourselves, or have more compassion and all of those things. And then suddenly life is easier and flows more. So although the author of our book, Jules Evans, thought it was a load of nonsense and was pretty scathing about Rhonda Byrne, who wrote The Secret, and law of attraction, other stuff, there is something in those ideas. But he's not alone. There are other people that look at CBT and the way it's used, where you use these phrases and so on. Is it a form of brainwashing? It does seem to work. So is it conscious brainwashing ourselves in a voluntarily and in a conscious way as opposed to an unconscious way? Does that make it better? And it's interesting because I have a dilemma like that in my own life. I've been dabbling a bit in non-duality and non-dualism, and been attracted to the teachings of some people in that world. And what I notice is that they only read books by other non-dualists. They only promote those books. They only promote teachers that are teaching the same as them. And that feels maybe not brainwashing, but almost like a cult, because there's more to life than non-dualism, the 3 Ps, whatever you want, all of those things that sit in a particular box. There are many paths that lead to consciousness. There's only one way, and that's consciousness, but there are many paths that can get us there. And I guess for someone like me, who's a blender that weaves, maybe colour and mindfulness and sound and music and all sorts of different things, Sufism, into it, I am never comfortable when someone's going, well, no, it's this way and this is the way. Because if there was only one way, we would all be doing it. And life is much richer and more diverse than that. And it's really relevant to this book because Pythagoras was accused in a way of having a cult, because if people applied to join his group, they would be rejected. And what they didn't necessarily know was then for not just for days, weeks or months, but for years, people would follow them and see, well, are they living by our laws and our beliefs and values? And then if they passed that test, they would be invited in to the next thing, and there'd be a series of initiations. And you were never allowed to, it was terribly secret. You weren't allowed to share any of this. And if you did, you were considered dead, and they would even erect a tomb for you. So that was sort of taking it to the nth degree, it feels to me. And what's actually reminded me of a book, Piranesi, that I read during lockdown, because we were talking about, there was a figure rather like that people were following, and everything about where he lived and the way that he operated, it was exactly as it was written about Pythagoras by Jules Evans in this book. And I was like, wow, I wonder if she's read the same book. So that's interesting. So, you know, maybe a question to consider for yourself as you're reading this chapter, or even if you haven't read the chapter, is when does a good idea become brainwashing? And I don't know the answer, but it's something to think about. So I hope that's been interesting, and I wish you a fabulous rest of your week wherever you are. Feel free to leave comments, either here or in our Telegram group if you're part of the book group. Lots of love, go well, and I look forward to speaking to you soon.